Hello, everyone, and welcome into the special early edition of the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. Lisa Matthews here with you, Zach Gallia, Kyle Odegaard, and joining us today, the queen of our fantasy league, 4-0, Taylor Holmes. How does it feel up there, Taylor?
Feels pretty good. A little lonely at the top.
A little lonely. Wow. Yep. Any advice for Kyle?
You want to just swap teams?
Yeah.
I'll trade everybody on my team for everybody on yours.
How many first-round picks am I getting next year?
Let's negotiate. All right.
I'm the one that's tanking.
You're taking on
That's
purpose?
true.
All right. You have a plan. I see that. Well, let's take a peek at the scoreboard quickly following week 4. We had Joan Suggs and Harmony take the win over Kyler, the creator. Now you had Connor. You had some guy. 3 guys score over 20-plus points for you, so that was a easy win.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it easy. I think it was well fought. It was a hard battle. Our guys really pulled it together on Monday Night Football. But I'm surprised Taylor wanted to be on the show today because the last 2 undefeated teams have gone down now that have joined the show. So maybe Taylor can break the streak.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Two Spoons got his first win over Jake's plumber, Kyle.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, things are not going well, clearly.
To say it clearly, Murray up offense, 81 points. That was the league low there. Show T the money took the win. Fantasy rookie got a little bit of a slight win over the dream team there. And then I second to last lowest. After having set the highest score, let me remind y'all, in week 3, I wasn't able to bask in my glory. Week 3, I think 187.84 to be exact.
That was 2 weeks ago. Move on.
We're past that now.
We're past that. Yep. Yeah, my team suffered. It's like I have alternating weeks of like guys going off. Keenan Allen, 43 points, and then all of a sudden he gives me 9 points. Not gonna cut it, but I'm gonna stick with him. But yeah, it's just, how are you guys feeling heading into week 5 with your teams?
I feel good. 3-1, not quite as good as Taylor's team, but I think we're really peaking right now. I got some tough decisions to make with Austin Eckler's been one of my best performing guys thus far, and now Melvin Gordon's back, and I wish he would have taken a couple more weeks off, but interested to see how quickly they get him back going in the offense and what kind of timeshare there's going to be. But I think up to this point I got to roll with Eckler until proven otherwise.
I think I just had a bad matchup this week. He had McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, who went off, and Fresh Prince. I'm talking about Fresh Prince of Air Raid. And he had Chris Godwin sitting on his bench with 41 points, putting that up. So let's take a look at the top performers across the league this week. See, Chris Godwin, there we go, on the bench, 41 points. Nick Chubb, 39. 33 for Christian McCaffrey. Another, that killed me. Jordan Howard. So he was a free agent, 32.50 points, and then picked up by this guy over here.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good pickup. It's still, I'm basically picking him up for potential purposes. Just he really didn't do much the first 3 weeks, and with the timeshare in Philly, it's hard to predict what's going to happen moving forward. But hopefully Thursday's game was kind of a preview of things to come. So, 32 and a half points this past week, and
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, still available. So I'll roll the dice.
Let's take a look at your team here, because
it's pretty solid.
It's pretty solid. The addition of Jordan Howard. So you're saying you might not start him this week.
So my big dilemma here is it would be my flex position. I think it's RWT in this league, but Jordan Howard for Philly, Josh Jacobs for Oakland, Jalen Samuels in Pittsburgh also had a big game, and I think he's going to be at least a bigger part of the offense moving forward. And then my other waiver pickup, Ronald Jones in Tampa. All of them are kind of still battling it out for my flex position. Okay. Right now I'm rolling with Howard, but that could change.
Yeah. The only thing is him sharing the backfield with Sanders. So that's
right. Which
question there.
That's the only thing that Josh Jacobs has going for him is not the only thing, but the only thing in this battle is he's not sharing the backfield with anyone.
Right.
So going up against a good defense in Chicago, which is also working against him. So some decisions to be made. I've also so George Kittle was my starting tight end for the last 3 weeks. He had a bye last week, and Austin Hooper ended up going off. So rolling with the hot hand. I think Hooper's got, got a good matchup coming up, and I think that's going to work out. And then my hot start for the week, which I think we have a sweet graphic coming in.
Ooh,
there we go.
Delicious.
So my hot start of this week is, and it may be a shocking pick, but the Arizona Cardinals defense. You saw what the Pittsburgh defense did to the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me look up the stats. 8 sacks, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, 3 points allowed, 19 points in fantasy. If TJ Watt and Bud Dupree can do that to the Bengals offensive line, I'm excited to see what Chandler Jones and Terrell Suggs can do to it.
Yeah, I mean, that was my sleeper going into this week. They were available, obviously. I was kind of mulling over that option, but the Cardinals have the playmakers to do it. Now this is a perfect opportunity against that O-line to perform. And
I got another hot start.
Ooh, Kyle.
Which you probably don't want to listen to because I'm 0-4. But I like Adam Thielen a lot, who did not get the ball very much at all last week. Went out publicly and said we have to throw the ball more, basically. Now there's questions about Stephon Diggs, and it doesn't seem like he's showing up to work at this point, and who knows if he's going to play, but I feel like Kirk Cousins knows that he needs to get Adam Thielen the ball, and I feel like they're going to force feed him this week. Could definitely see a lot of catches in a PPR league especially, and probably a touchdown.
Ooh, Kyle with the hot take over here.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about a hot start for you in week 5. Let's take a look at your team. What's it going to take here, Kyle? Let's get you a win this week.
I think I just need my guys to perform better. I mean, that's a really good
you
team.
have a talented,
I don't know what's going on.
You have playmakers. They're just
Jameis Winston's playing better, so Lamar Jackson have kind of used the first 4 weeks, and now I got to maybe play it week by week there because those guys kind of go back and forth depending on the week and the matchup. And the other one is at flex, Tyler Lockett or Josh Gordon, since basically everybody else on my bench is either hurt or not playing. So it's an easy choice between those two, and I just usually flip a coin each week.
There's your tactic. That's how you get things done.
That's my strategy.
Might have to start rolling a dice instead of flipping
There
a
you
coin.
go.
Maybe Taylor can give you some wise words
She
of
rolls the
wisdom right
dice.
here.
That's the key.
I don't know. I'm just lucky I played Jarecki this past week because
Ooh.
I'm
You hear that,
102.
MJ?
I only had 102 points. My kicker had more than all 3 of my receivers. So hopefully that'll improve going forward this week.
All right, let's take a look at your team. Oof, lethal. I mean,
I'm liking my lineup. I started Rivers last week, but I'm going with Rodgers this week. I kind of, like Kyle said, look at the matchups. Rodgers, Green Bay is playing Dallas, so I think there might be a little bit of a shootout there. I regretted putting Rodgers on the bench last week because he scored 25 points, but Rivers had 20 last week, but they play who do they play this week? The Chargers. I can't remember. Denver, that's right, yeah. So I just thought that Rodgers might show up more for a Dallas matchup in the shootout there. And I picked up Howard from Tampa Bay, the tight end. So I'm debating between him and Ertz. So we'll see there. But with the way that Tampa Bay's offense has been performing, he might be a good guy to put in there. Yes. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's crazy. It seems like every week one of the Tampa Bay playmakers is at the top of the top players.
And it switches off. It's not consistent. And
Chris
Winston
Godwin
just
last week, and then
he chooses
Mike
a new
Evans
target
before.
every week. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be Howard this week.
Howard.
But I almost picked up the Eagles defense because they play the Jets, and Jacksonville got me 2 points last week.
yeah.
But I'm hoping they step it up again this week. We'll see if Ramsey plays or not, but I know he was still
TBD.
questionable in practice, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm all about slashing the defenses right now. Here's a look at my team. As of, you did update it. Okay, my bad.
I told you.
I dropped Ravens defense. They gave me -1 point point. Let's just say that last week, which, I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference, like I said, going up against Fresh Prince and his playmakers. But I dropped them. I picked up the Titans defense. They're going up against the Bills. I think this is a good matchup. They've allowed opponents allowed 12 points from defenses this year, and then Josh Allen might obviously not play. So I think that's a good start on this week. But yeah, I think looking at it, I'm going to probably make some changes before the game. I'm kind of like that go with the gut, but I mean,
You're
actually,
logging
no.
on 5 minutes
I
before
am.
kickoff.
I'm pretty much that person. I'm not going to start Brady. No, actually, let's say this is going to be as is. David Johnson.
For now.
David Johnson, my guy. Come through week 5 for me.
I feel like as it gets deeper into the season too, it's harder because you have more people on the injury report, and you know you have to wait until last second for the limited practice and the questionables. Last week I was like, is Frank Gore gonna play or not? And I was like sitting there on
while
Sunday,
we're at work, and I'm trying to figure out who's inactive plus for us as well.
Right.
Gosh, trying to multitask, but yeah, that's right. I kind of secretly pray that whoever I'm playing, they forget that one of their players on the bye. They want to set their lineup. Yeah. So I think I play MJ this week. I just don't watch. Here's your clue. All right. Well, let's look at the Cardinals' top performers from week 4. We have David Johnson leading the way, Kyler Murray 16.34, Larry Fitzgerald, and of course with Christian Kirk possibly and likely not playing this week, I think it's a good time to pick up Keyshawn Johnson, even maybe Andy Isabella, and you know that Larry Fitzgerald will get a lot more targets, obviously with the loss of Kirk. So this should be an interesting week ahead. And with that, we actually have some friends joining the show. It's the Fantasy Footballers with their take for the Cardinals heading into week 5.
All right, thanks, guys, for having us on. Obviously, it's a privilege to come on the show, and being native Arizonans and Cardinal fans, it's a thrill to come on and talk a little bit of fantasy football with these Arizona Cardinals. It seems like focusing on fantasy is the right thing right now.
Right. For now, yes.
They're getting this thing figured out, and someone has to win this game, right? I mean, we have 2 winless teams, the Cardinals traveling to Cincinnati, opportunity right in front of them. Now the Cardinals shorthanded. Christian Kirk unlikely to play in this game. Maybe we see more Andy Isabella. What are the big storylines for you when it comes to Fitzgerald and then, you know, the other pieces in this offense, David Johnson, Kyler Murray?
So that's where you got to start. You got to start with David Johnson, who he's been doing all his damage through the air. And this Cincinnati Bengals, for fantasy purposes, they are ranked dead last against running backs. We all watched it happen on Monday night. You had the Island game. It was for everyone to see. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they did whatever they wanted with the running back position. They didn't even use their quarterback. They said, we're going to use our running back as a quarterback. And there was, I think, 16 total receptions by Jalen Samuels and James Conner combined. Like, that's how they won that game. The Steelers went exclusively through the running back.
Yeah, and we saw that this is what Kyler had to do last week. He had to turn to David Johnson in the short passing game. Offensive line pressure, it gives him trouble. He needs to do more to kind of escape the pocket or make those decisions a little bit quicker. It's not college football anymore. He can't spin out and then find something downfield. You got to be a little quicker on those decisions. But for fantasy purposes, like you said, David Johnson should be able to do it through the air. I'd like to see him do it between the tackles a little bit this week because you're not going to get a better matchup than Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, you're really not. And with Kyler specifically, that's the guy that I'm trusting with the pace of play of both of these teams, right? Zach Taylor coming over to the Bengals from the Los Angeles Rams system. He plays with a faster pace of play, but nowhere near as fast as the Cardinals are playing. That just gives more offensive opportunities. Kyler is now starting to run the ball somewhat by necessity, but that's great for fantasy. And while you lose Christian Kirk, you do get Andy Isabella back, and I believe being used the right way, right? Cliff Kingsbury talked about he's going to be used on the outside. When they drafted him, they were talking about using him as a slot guy. That's not what Andy Isabella was in college. So while I'm not necessarily starting Andy Isabella in my home leagues, I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. If you're playing DFS and you want one of those home run plays that not a lot of people are doing, a Kyler Murray, Andy Isabella stack could be great.
That's risky business.
It's risky business, but that means not a lot of other people are doing it. And look at what the Bengals have given up to the quarterbacks. I mean, they're 25th in the league right now in fantasy points given up, and that's including Mason Rudolph last week.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think the sneaky play might be more of a Trent Sherfield or somebody who's been established more in the offense so far this year. But either way, you've got a vulnerable defense. Vegas has this game as of right now at about a 47.5 point over-under. You like to look to Vegas in fantasy to see some of these higher-scoring games, opportunities. 2 teams that really need a win, two teams with rookie head coaches. trying to build these offenses and figure things out. Andy Dalton on one side. Can the Cardinals stop the tight end position? This is another question that we have because you haven't been able to do it yet. In 2019, Greg Olsen went to town. You saw Will Disley. It's tough. We were at the game, and that was great, being at the game. Not so great watching Will Disley catch the ball whenever he pleased, 10-plus yards down the field and in the end zone. So,
and then the last thing to touch on here, the GOAT. Number 2 in all-time receptions, Larry Fitzgerald. And look, you got him locked in?
He is a locked-in
The targets
starter.
have not been in there. Week 1 and Week 2, you thought you had a screaming late-round value in Larry when he had 24 combined targets. Since then, in the next 2 games, just a total of 12.
With the absence of Christian Kirk, the 47.5-point over-under, the defense of the Bengals, everything lines up for Larry to have a great game. He is better at home in the home-road splits, but look at the first couple weeks. He balled out in Baltimore. So I think Larry is going to be too necessary for this offense. Like, how do the Cardinals move the ball if it's not through Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson? Those are the 2 guys I think are plugged in as locked and loaded starters. Kyler's a guy that I think is also a very good play this week.
All right, special thanks to the fantasy footballers for their take on the Cardinals, and thank you all for joining us on the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. We'll see you next week.